Why is violence against women not treated the same as terrorism? What's the difference between people living in fear because of their religion that they chose and living in fear because of their gender?
Murray, what?
I've been thinking about this quite a bit over the last few days, especially since the appalling Bondi incident, which would seem pretty obviously to be involved targeting women. I realise there's got to be coronial
the police confirmed
like
that they believe
it's pretty obvious if you look at the numbers of murders involved. I'm not sure that classifying it as a terrorist offence is necessarily the way to go, but I do think that we need to examine and do something about the ideology that seems to be driving this kind of behaviour from some men. Bridget's right, we don't want to argue that all men are bad people, and I know no one's trying to do that, but there's some pretty bad elements out there, and they're flourishing. They're able to use online media in a way that was never possible before. And I've just been even thinking about the conversation tonight. Some of the solutions that people are putting up rightly are things that we've been talking about for a long time, but there are some new things on the horizon now as well. And I think the growth of those misogynistic hate groups has got to be tackled. And that is a new frontier, if you like, in this ongoing battle.
Well, I have to take you up on that because you have put forward a new idea. How do you tackle misogynistic online hate? How do you do it?
I don't pretend to have the solution to that, but I guess I'm also hoping that that's something that we might be able to deal with through this discussion now that is underway about online media.
But if we don't have those solutions, isn't that where the Royal Commission could be useful?
No, I mean, National Cabinet's going to, I think, discuss a Royal Commission, but I'm not persuaded that's the way to go, and it's partly because of what John just said. And I've noticed that most of the victim survivor groups don't support a Royal Commission either. They just want action.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that many of those groups were heavily involved in the design of the National Action Plan. We need to get on and get it done and deliver it. But I absolutely acknowledge the point that you're making, that this is a new issue that we need a different kind of response to. And the Andrew Tates of this world are playing a very, very dangerous role in fostering that kind of hatred of women. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that that sort of ideology and that sort of thinking is having some impact on some of the men who are committing this violence.
We've got Vincent Hurley in the audience. He's a criminologist at Macquarie University and a former New South Wales Police detective. Vincent, thanks for joining us.
That's right, Patricia.
You've been watching this debate and you did policing in this area for a long time. What do you think we need? Is it to classify it as a terrorist act? Is that the sort of way that we need to go forward?
Can I just make a couple of observations before I go into that? The very first question you asked the two parliamentarians, they immediately started bickering amongst each other about who had the best politics. That just goes to show the point that you are overlooking the murder of women out here. You're putting politics above these people behind me. How dare you? How dare you go into politics in an environment like this when one woman is murdered every 4 days and all you two can do is immediately talk about politics? That is just disgraceful. Is it any wonder frontline services aren't getting the money that they want? You can talk about putting out billions of dollars. AUKUS cost $300 billion. Do you think the federal government could spare a couple of $1 billion, even $1 million, for the pastor here at the Wayside Chapel? No, you couldn't. You made the comment we need to listen more. For God's sake, how long do we have to listen to politicians like you and the rest of you high-horsing about we have to have a Royal Commission, we have to do this? Everyone here knows what the answer is.
OK, so what are they? What are they?
First of all, that man should never have been released on bail. OK, that is the very first thing that happened. If a male has a history of crimes of violence, of any form of domestic violence, coercion, physical, emotional, they should not have the presumption of bail. They should not get bail at all. There will be people who vehemently disagree about the rule of law, about the right of individuals, about the innocence before guilty. But what does society want? We want those poor girls up there from those high schools, 1 in every 4 of them are likely to be sexually assaulted after the age of 15. And you all sit here and pontificate about what we're doing. You're not doing enough.
So what do they do? Should they designate it intimate terror acts?
Yeah, there's enough legislation there for police to go and arrest them. New South Wales Police have had a pro-arrest policy for at least 30 years, and we cannot arrest our way out of this. But for the immediate concern of the women here, they need to have that offender taken off the street to give them breathing space to get away to a women's refuge. Over the decades, all governments of all persuasions, state and federal, you have patient dumped people with mental health and drug issues onto the street, which are the underlying causes of domestic violence. And I know, because I've read 1,362 coroner's reports in New South Wales over the last 20 years, and that is the common element. So you talk about domestic violence. It is more than just domestic violence. You don't need a Royal Commission. That money needs to go into frontline services now.
Vince, I know you worked in this area for a long time and you're very passionate about it. We invited you on because we wanted to hold them to account because they can actually make laws. You're in government, but, you know, you've been in government and obviously you've got a crucial position in the Senate as well where you can really influence things. Do you understand Vince's anger? I mean, he feels
Sorry, Patricia. I went to 20 domestics in one night when I was in the police. I was stationed at Mount Druitt, Blacktown, St Mary's and Penrith. And you could not imagine, unless you've been the victim of domestic violence, I held a 10-year-old child in my arms who died from the stabbing from her father. OK? You have no comprehension unless you have been in that situation. But to get up here and say that we need to do this and we need to do that, I think it's just... It's offensive to these people here.
OK. I'll give you a right of reply, Murray.
Well, thanks, Vince. And I acknowledge your incredible experience, which goes well beyond mine, and that's obviously informed your views on this. You know, I do think it's important to inform the public about things that have been done, acknowledge that more needs to be done and talk about the kind of things that should be done now. And that's, I guess, what we've tried to do tonight. Specifically on the legal changes, obviously a number of them would need to be made at a state level, but I think this is a conversation that's going to be happening this Wednesday at National Cabinet. That's the point of getting the Prime Minister and every Premier or Chief Minister together to talk about what might need to change in the laws at state and federal level as well.
Vince.
Well, you do. You need to reach agreement with... We don't legislate on this. We need to reach...
All right.
Vince,
Bridget?
you know, I have never been a frontline emergency service personnel, so what you've had to deal with in your time in the police force, along with all victim survivors, their children, their family, the flow-on effect, the impact's obviously phenomenal. No one wants to take that away, and it doesn't just impact the person that the crime is perpetrated against. I think everybody that I know that gets into politics actually wants to make a change. Is it harder than we thought it would be when we started? Yes. Does it mean we still keep trying? Yes. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm sure most of the MPs that I work with on both sides do not want to see this to continue, have had enough, and want to do what we can to make a difference.
If this discussion is raising any difficulties for you or anyone you know, and I know given this issue touches so many people, it has, the numbers for 1800 RESPECT and Women's Crisis Line are there on your screen and I urge you to use them.